We are beginning. Thank you for coming and being ready to listen to me. I'm going to put you to hard task. There will be no pictures on the screen. There will be no prompts. The only prompts are there for me. And I will ask you to think with me, to follow the ideas I will offer to you, and then to use them in order to solve the exercise which I have prepared for you, and which will be an exercise in reading a Shakespearean dialogue as a dialogue in which we participate, not the people in the play, but we. The title of this workshop, or the main theme of this workshop, is Meeting the Other. That's what we've been doing here, or at least what we did on the very first day when we came here. And Anya and Marta have so wonderfully prepared that meeting for us, so that we were facing the other. We keep doing that continually in our life. And yet they try to make us aware that what may be difficult may be made easy if we try. So if you look at the meeting with the other, you look at a problem at a moment in which you face crisis. But if you work in a proper way, you may resolve the crisis. You may overcome it, and you may develop something out of this unexpected, difficult moment. And to illustrate this, I will give you an anecdote which is absolutely true because it happened to me. Many years ago, I went for the first time to the United States to join a Shakespearean Congress, Los Angeles, downtown, that is right in the center. We were placed in 2 hotels. Those who had money were in the Biltmore. Those who had no money were in the Hyatt. I was in the Hyatt. This is important because in the evenings we were taken by a coach to theater performances in various places. And on one night, we came very, very late. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And the bus took us only to the Biltmore. And those who lived in the Hyatt had to walk 3 blocks down the street. And on that particular night, it happened that I was the only participant of the party from the Hyatt. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, everybody disappeared in the Biltmore, and I had to walk the 3 blocks. Crisis. In the sense, not of meeting the other, of fearing meeting the other. Because I was instructed that I should not be on my own after 7 o'clock in the evening. And if I happened to be on my own, I should have 20 or 50 cents in my pocket. And on this bloody night, I had no change at all. I had no money at all. I left everything in the hotel, not expecting this sudden situation. So what could I do? I had to master myself and walk down the street. And so I did. And of course, suddenly, out of nowhere, came out this young man, a woolen cap on his head, dark skin, I have to mention that, because all that builds my situation. And he carries a paper cup in his hand, and you know what it means. And he comes up to me with the cup saying nothing. Meeting the other, crisis, absolutely. You know, I was frozen. And I didn't think what to do. I probably followed an instinct, or maybe a behavior that was instilled in me through my education. I don't know. It's very difficult to say. I looked at him. I just looked into his face, and I said, "I'm sorry. I have no money." And he said, And I always have tears in my eyes when I remember what he said. He said, "Thank you for talking to me." And that was it. That was meeting the other. That was almost involuntary way in which I solved the crisis of that meeting, by talking. And, which is important, by looking into his face. Okay? And now this was the easy part. Moving me always, whenever I think of it, I'm always moved. It always is a moment which I remember as one of the most important lessons in my life. Okay, I'll just get my prompts on so that I don't get lost in what I want to say. But what I want to, oh, don't be stupid, you machine. What I want to talk about is to give you some sort of, philosophical frame to the problem of meeting the other and of solving the crisis of meeting the other. The other will always be the other, but the idea is that we can communicate, that we can enter into dialogue. Now, first, a crisis. What is crisis? There are very many definitions of crisis, but definitely it is a situation in which, first of all, we do not feel comfortable. Second, we feel it's difficult. Third, we may be afraid. Fourth, we don't know what to do. Very often people, when they meet a crisis, a situation of crisis, they just prefer to do nothing. It will solve itself. But that's a way in which the crisis will never disappear. We always have to act. We have to do something. And so if we look at the problem of meeting the other as a crisis, I think that in that situation, because there are many crises, there are crises in economy, you may have face a bankruptcy, you may lose your job, you may suddenly find yourself in jail. We are only focusing on the crisis of suddenly being faced with the other. What can we do? And I think I've already prompted you to the idea, let's act, let's speak, let's communicate. Now, how do we do it? What happens when we meet the other? These are the questions that some of the recent philosophers, 20th century philosophers mainly, ask themselves. And we may even say that there is something like philosophy of dialogue. And I want to introduce you to the ideas of 4 people, the ideas which were born out of the problem of facing God. But we are not going to talk about facing God. That's part of the philosophical divagations that are not part of our interest. Because what the philosophers did was thinking of meeting God as meeting the other person. So what their ideas open themselves also to our consideration of a very practical problem, okay? So the first person that I want to introduce to you is called Martin Buber. Martin Buber was a Jewish philosopher of the first part of the 20th century, and he wrote a book which was entitled Ich und Du, I and Thou, Te I Ja, or Ja I Te. And this, of course, the very title is a title about subjectivity and recognition that myself is not thyself. I and you are 2 different entities. So what happens? How do we act? What is the essence of this difference? These were the questions that Buber tried to ask. And he wasn't thinking of a situation of crisis. He was thinking of the inevitability of this situation in our life. And when you think of the other, it doesn't have to be a person who is from a completely different culture, who represents different kind of values. It may be your neighbor, it may be your husband, it may be your daughter. You always are in the situation of ich und du, okay? So it's a relationship. It's a relationship which is basic to our existence. And it's a concrete encounter. So concrete that he, theological Jewish philosopher, described as, for example, the meeting of two lovers, but also a meeting with your dog or cat. We talked about cat this morning. So a very concrete thing, a very concrete situation, okay? And as I said, Buber did not think of crisis, but he said a crisis is imminent. And you have to think of the mutuality of that encounter. You have to remember that I and do is exchangeable. I am I for you, but you looking at me are I, and I am you, okay? So this mutuality, the recognition of this mutuality is essential for Buber to make the encounter true, to make it happen. If you don't recognize the mutuality of the encounter, crisis. There is no meeting, there is no encounter. So he looked at it from a slightly different angle than I illustrated with my experience, but I could also use his ideas to describe what happened to me and say, at the moment when I looked at this boy, because he was a very young man, and I said I was sorry, I recognized the mutuality of the situation and I avoided crisis and made the encounter concrete. So these are the ideas that Buber introduced to philosophy of the dialogue, but it was taken up by another philosopher, in fact, the inventor of the term the other. That's Emmanuel Levinas, as most of you probably know. Now, Levinas took up this idea of what happens when you and I come together and had a slightly different idea about what may be done about the encounter, okay? So he says, yes, we have to think of I and you. He uses different terms. He says the self and the other. But, of course, we can always resolve this description as I and you if it's simpler. Now, Levinas was a moral philosopher. He was interested in the ethics, in the values, in whatever we do, in however we act. So he describes the encounter as facing the other. And what does it mean when you say facing the other? It means you look in the face of the other, okay? And the other looks at you. In Levinas' description, the important thing is to accept that the other looks at you, because it's the only way in which you can feel that you are you and not him or her. So the encounter is the recognition that I learn something from the other. And in that sense, the other is for me a master teacher, okay? The boy was a teacher for me. And if you try to make this encounter a concrete, real encounter, you have to accept moral obligation to take the lesson from the other. So it's a new way in which you face the other. You face the other in order to learn, in order to have new experience, in order to make yourself something that you may grow yourself by recognition of the lesson of the other, what the other tells you about yourself, and the other always tells you about the difference between him, her, and yourself, okay? Now, Levinas was analyzing this moral situation of the encounter of two people, mainly as an asymmetrical relation, that is always the self learns from the other. But I think we may easily recognize that what is asymmetrical for me is equally asymmetrical for you, because then you are the I and I am the other, and you learn from me. So I think that what is important is to understand the lesson Levinas offers us, that lesson, what I learn from the other, and that I have to learn from the other. That this is partly what it means I accept the other. I accept the difference. In that way, I can define myself better, and I can grow in my moral values, because for Levinas, meeting the other always means meeting other values, and you have to learn about them. And the only correction that I would introduce here is, rather than see it as asymmetrical, I would see it as symmetrical. Because if I meet you, I want to learn from you, but at the same time, I would like you to learn from me. So in this way, I see it as a wonderful description of a teaching situation in a classroom. Don't you think? That part of the success in getting over to your students is that you recognize them as the other, and that you take something from them, and not only lecture at them, thinking that everything that is valuable is what you have to offer. No, not like that. So these ideas of Levinas for me were an eye-opener for me as a teacher. Okay. And now the next person I want to introduce is the patron of my school, a philosopher, Józef Tischner, who died not very long ago, and who is very well known in Poland for introducing philosophy of dialogue. He was, of course, very well learned in what Buber offered in the analysis of meeting the other. He knew Levinas inside out. He was a great philosopher, in fact. But he said, yes, but let's look at meeting the other as still offering us a different dimension. We have this symmetrical situation in which two people meet, and those people will never meet if they do not start communicating. If they don't, learning from the other, in fact, is getting into a situation of a dialogue. He tried to analyze that situation as a situation between the questioning and the questioned. I asked you a question, you answer it. Why do I ask a question? Because I want to learn from you. Why do you answer? Because you want to offer something. But the moment you answer, you may ask me a question. And the exchange becomes valuable, meaningful, and the encounter becomes concrete, what Buber wanted, that the encounter should not be crisis, should be concrete. So if for Levinas the encounter would not be critical, if we recognize the lesson of the other, if we enter into this exchange of values and see it as an ethical obligation, Tishner adds, yes, but we also want to develop communication, and we also want to see in the dialogue the possibilities of a true dialogue and the possibilities of a dialogue which does not have a meaning, which does not offer us a situation in which we can enter into the encounter with the other. In other words, we perform, we put on masks, and these masks were already mentioned by Levinas. He said, when you look at the face of the other, offer him, her, your real face, and expect the real face from the other. And Tishner said, yes, the world is like a stage, and we are all actors on it. And acting means two things. Acting means doing. Acting means pretending. And that's the problem for the dialogue, isn't it? Okay. So enough of this great philosopher. No, sorry. One more thing. Wait a minute. There is still Jacques Derrida. Some people hate him, some people like him. For me, again, he offered ideas which are eye-opening. Derrida did not think really and did not try to get into the philosophy of dialogue. But he did offer an analysis of the word hospitality. What is hospitality? Hospitality, and here he begins with Kant, is an obligation of accepting a guest in your house. If a guest comes, if the other comes, the meeting at the threshold of your house means that the other expects you to invite the other, and you know that you should invite the other, because that's the essence of hospitality. Now, what happens when the other crosses the threshold of your house? The other is on your territory. So, says Derrida, the meeting with the other never takes place in a neutral space. Mm-hmm. It's either in your space or in somebody else's space. Okay, what does it mean about your hospitality? Think about it. It means that by inviting the guest into your room, you expect that the guest will follow your rules because you are the master or mistress of the place. And you take for granted that if you offer hospitality, the person comes in and does what you want. How about your expecting of what the guest needs? Sometimes you open up to what the guest needs, but sometimes you don't. That's only the beginning of the problem. Because who is the guest? Who is the other? A friend or an enemy? And that comes out of a philological, lexical analysis of the word hospitality, hospice, where you are you face two Latin words which are very close together in sound. One is host as somebody who welcomes you, but the other is hostess as the enemy. So hospitality, now think about it. When you are the host, are you the friend completely? Or do you try to wall yourself against the possibilities of feeling in the other an enemy? why do you say, take off your shoes? And you can sit here, and I can offer you tea. You don't ask what the guest would like to get. So what Derrida says, to make it very simple, really, he says, let's think of hospitality. Hospitality, which means a paradox of hostility and hospitality, which grow together so close, and how careful we have to be about treading on this very, very dangerous ground between hospitality and hostility. But that's also the idea, also a very interesting way of looking at meeting the other. Something that none of those high-minded moral philosophers thought. Derrida, in a way, brings everything down to dust and says, okay, we are all very idealistic about meeting the other, but think what you do when you meet the other. You may say, yes, Levinas is right, of course, yes, I have the moral obligation to learn from the other. But you say, but the other, you mind your steps, will you? Okay? So we always defend ourselves, in a sense. And recognition of this, I think, is important. Derrida is famous for introducing this word aporia, the paradox, a situation which is unresolvable. Crisis? Is it hospitality? Is it hostility? Do I treat you as an enemy? Do I treat you as a friend? Or neither? I make it difficult. I find it difficult. So this aporia of hospitality, I think, is very, very much at the center of the crisis, or the possible crisis, of the situation in which we meet the other. And in trying to resolve or avoid the crisis, we have to remember about this as well. Okay, and now it's high time we get into the problem of dialogue. Just a second. I'll just switch it off because I don't need it anymore, and my battery will die if I don't. Okay, we'll let it sleep, shall we say. Okay, what happens when we take a play in our hands? We come to read a dialogue. Adam yesterday put stress on soliloquy. That is a long speech which you deliver where there is nobody around. A completely false situation, because there is always somebody for whom you deliver the soliloquy, if only the audience. Or there is the aside, of course, very important parts of what in fact constitutes an unending dialogue. Because soliloquy or monologue or aside are in fact parts, elements of continual dialogue. Now, when we open the play and look at the page, we see that we have the names of the characters and the words that are given to the characters. And most people, when they are asked to read a play, read through the words without recognizing that each line, each word, in fact, each syllable is part of doing things, not just saying things. And that if the playwright designs a dialogue, he or she designs this dialogue not as words on the page, but as, shall we say, representation of something that may happen between two people or three people, between you and I, between me and the other. that every time when you look at the exchange in the dialogue on the page, you have to make the effort to see the people trying to get at the other. In what way? It's your interpretation. It's how you understand the word, but also what you do with the words, because Shakespeare never wrote these words just to be read. He gave them to the actors, and he said, do, act, perform, enter into the situation, okay? So it's no use reading through the play and say, aha, I know what happens. So there is this Shylock, and there is Antonio, there is Bassanio. Bassanio wants to get Portia, he has no money because he has lost all he had on drinking wine and beer. So he goes to Antonio, who is his very good friend, and he says, Antonio, how about getting me some money because I need to get this girl because she's well-funded. And Antonio says, I'm sorry, I don't have the money, you go to the Jew. So he goes to the Jew, he says, Shylock, give me some money. Shylock says, well, I can give you on some condition. He sets the condition, Bassanio gets the money, goes and woos the Portia, is very successful. And in the meantime, Antonio loses all his fortune. So Shylock says, aha, now comes my bond. I didn't want any interest on the money I gave you, but I want a pound of flesh. And you have this terrible situation, which is resolved at the trial end of the play. That's not about it. That's nothing like it, really. Every moment, every little bit on the page grows, if you can look at it properly, as an element of meeting the other, as an element of doing something, getting into crisis or trying to get out of the crisis, of thinking of how we can say the words. And when we say the words, how do we use our body? Because we use our body continually in the real encounter, don't we? So it's not that I try to teach you to be actors, but to be able to read a dialogue is to be able to see that a dialogue may be a representation of a real encounter, and that you can represent this encounter as a crisis, or as a solution of the crisis, or as an attempt to get over the crisis, sometimes successful, sometimes unsuccessful. That really what is the essence of the text of a play is to offer you an opportunity to have an experience. And the beauty of theatre of the festival here is that every time you come here and you see The Merchant of Venice for the 5th time, 10th time, 11th time, you may discover something new about the encounter of the other. And that's the, I think, great value of being able to look into the text without going to the theatre and trying to see that we all may be getting into a situation like this, and we have to solve it. We have the moral obligation, and we may act well or we may act badly. Okay, so this much of the, shall we say, more methodological frame for what we want to do in this workshop. I have prepared for you the texts of one scene from Shylock, from The Merchant of Venice, sorry. I have given you a summary of the play, which is only to make you aware of what people we are encountering in this scene. I have chosen, it's a lengthy scene, but there are many people here, and so there will be work for each of you, or you will work in pairs, because I have chosen a scene in which you have a continual exchange between two people only. So we have an essence of meeting the other. Shylock and Bassanio are the two persons who meet in the first part of the scene. Bassanio is a young man, shall we say, as the other for me, he is somebody from whom I would learn a lesson how not to waste everything I have. He is a wastrel. He is a person who has lived without any moral obligation so far, and suddenly he finds himself in a financial crisis. Okay. And Shylock, Shylock is a banker. Okay. We are in Venice. We are in whatever, 16th century, 14th century, no matter. What is the scene? What is the space which, as Derrida tells us, is never innocent? The space of Venice means that you have Venetians, but you also have the Jews. So I don't want to get into anti-Semitism. I want to keep on the idea that we have two others. There are two parties in that community that feel themselves to be others. There are Venetians, there are the Jews. Now, whose house is it? Exactly, we are in Venice. So the Venetians are the hosts and the Jews are guests. Mm-hmm. Now, are they welcome guests? Are they friends? This is a problem here. They are, in fact, refused to be recognized as friends. They have different religion, they have different rituals, they have different habits, and they do a thing that we Venetians, Christians, cannot do and will not do. They live on interest of lending money. They are usurers. But how come they are usurers? Because we Venetians need money. Somebody must keep the bank. So there is a way in which you might think the situation between I and you is resolved in the sense that we have a common field of action between us. I need money, I keep money, we negotiate. And essentially, negotiation is a dialogue. So it's a good situation. It's not a critical situation, is it? And this, I would like to think about it when we look at the very beginning of the scene I'm going to study with you, okay? I shall read it for you to make it easier and explain things if you're not quite sure what they mean, but I don't think the language here is extremely complicated. So we have Bassanio, who is in need of money, and we have Shylock, who keeps a bank. Okay. And they appear on the stage in the middle of negotiation. And Shylock says, 3,000 ducats. Well, Bassanio, I serve for 3 months. For 3 months. Well, for the which, as I told you, Antonio shall be bound. Antonio shall be bound means that Antonio will pay back, because I don't have anything. Antonio shall be bound. Well. May you stead me? Will you please me? Shall I know your answer? May you stead me? Can you help me? 3,000 ducats for 3 months, and Antonio bound. Your answer to that? Antonio is a good man. Have you heard any imputation to the contrary? No, 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 no. My meaning in saying he's a good man is to have you understand me that he is sufficient, that is, he has enough money. Yet his means are in supposition. That means his funds are at the moment engaged. He has no liquid money. He has an argosy. Argosy is a ship. He has an argosy bound to Tripolis, another to the Indies. I understand, moreover, upon the Rialto, where all the business gossip is exchanged, he has a third ship at Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he has squandered abroad. But ships are boards, sailors but men. There be land rats and water rats, water thieves, land thieves, I mean pirates. And then there is the peril, danger, the peril of waters, winds, rocks. The man is, notwithstanding, sufficient, 3,000 ducats. I think I may take his bond. His bond means his obligation to pay back. Be assured you may, says Bassanio, not Antonio. I will be assured I may, and that I may be assured, I will bethink me. I will think further. May I speak with Antonio? If it please you to dine with us? Yes, to smell pork, to eat of the habitation which your prophet of the Nazarite conjured the devil into. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so following, but I will not eat with you, drink with you, nor pray with you. That's about the first part of the encounter. Okay? What I would like you now is to try to think how this negotiation goes on. What happens in that negotiation? Not what is said. What is said you have in front of your eyes. What is going on between one and the other? Floor is yours. Negotiation. So this is an encounter of negotiation. I have a request, I come to you, and you listen to my request and negotiate. What's wrong in this negotiation? Or perhaps nothing.
There is this sense of mutual distrust and mutual uneasiness.
Yeah, but you have to be concrete where you see it. Each exchange, remember, each exchange is action. Something happens between the two people. We are talking about what happens between the two people. What happened to me when that boy came to me with this paper cap, you see? This is it. Not what I said, what he said, but what happened between us. This is how I want you to analyze the negotiation.
Do you agree that Bassanio thinks he has the upper hand by inviting, so in fact, by asking Shylock to dine with us, he thinks that's enough to get the
Why do you? Yes. Why do you interpret like this?
The honor of dining with us.
So we have the situation of hospitality. From Bassanio's point of view, the situation is of hospitality.
Right.
And from Shylock's point of view?
No,
just the opposite.
Yes.
Hostility.
Yes.
So, yes.
I'm not sure if it's on the Sunday side that he's really hospitality. It sounds more like condescension
Okay. Yes. We give you the honor of actually you dining with us. So normally, if I'd rather not have much to do with you, right? But we invite you to our table because of the money. Okay.
But there's still a first act in Finland, there's Antonio. And Bassanio played, he abused Antonio's position, and he is offering something in the name of Antonio, when Antonio is not in that situation. So I would be just, with Shylock, I would not respect him, because he's not himself when he's coming. He has nothing to offer me. And he's offering something that belongs to somebody else. So if for me money and responsibility was the most important value, it would be hard for me to respect him. I think
Right, so you find that for Bassanio, the only set of values is the money. And he sees in Shylock not a person, but a source of money.
And inviting for dinner is just like playing something with...
Playing a game. I would like you more comments on Bassanio. Bassanio's position in this encounter. Yes.
I think there's more levels to his invitation to dinner, because he plays the host at the same time knowing that Shylock will never attend dinner. I would think that's because they have to, that this is the rules. So it's almost like a dare or an insult inviting to dinner, knowing that this will be rejected in a way, but the construction of the level of that is that you cannot not get any money, although you reject dinner part. So it's Shylock is put in a very difficult place because he knows he will reject the dinner because of his religion and beliefs, and Bassanio knows that as well.
So we have the recognition of the two parties of the position. Okay, Shylock knows that he is an unwelcome stranger, and Bassanio knows that he represents the owners of the place, the nations. Okay, all right. So the situation is hardly a situation which can be resolved into an encounter which will bring some positive result. And yet Bassanio is extremely polite.
Yes, just if we could go back to this idea of dinner, dining, sharing food, right, which is, I guess, also a token of some ultimate trust. I share my food with somebody else, somebody else shares their food with me.
Yeah.
And this is the moment, precisely like you said, where we know, and they know, that it's impossible for religious reasons. Because the diet for each party is different, and they can't simply share their food. And just one more thing, just an idea. It's interesting to note that Bassanio says, if it please you to dine with us, and who's paying for it?
Yes. I was thinking about the meaning of offering something, offering presents or a gift or something to others. Because in one way, is the offering a gift, a bond to bind them to you. We know that the Christians gave gifts to their slaves or friends or other people in some time, just to demonstrate this bond or tighten it. So I think Bassanio is extremely insulting, and he also is showing his power in doing this.
Yes, I think, yes, Claudia was first, yes.
He's being teased from the very beginning. Bassanio,
Speak up.
Bassanio is being teased by Shylock from the very beginning. Because he said, think what is going physically isn't how to do. I don't know if you noticed that we are somehow thrown in the middle of the conversation because they're coming in. 3,000 ducats. Well, Shylock is probably repeating Bassanio's words, and he continues doing that for 3 months. For 3 months, well, and he does that many times. As if, I don't know, it's this repetition of. That's an interesting kind of dialogue when you repeat some the person's words.
But it's negotiation, isn't it?
Yeah, but how? I don't know what it is, but it sounds as if, I don't know, you did not trust the words, you have to repeat them. Why is he doing that? Is it to tease Bassanio? Because, maybe to understand better what he said, make sure that this is, that's something strange.
Maybe to underline that Shylock says, well, I have the money, and by repeating and make you understand, Bassanio, that it's a big deal, right? It's my money, and 3,000, that one. And once again, 3,000, yes.
But then it's 3 months, and Antonio should be
Again.
It's
The way of not giving an answer also.
Thank you for this remark. We shall come to it, but I would like to finish the discussion about these 3,000 ducats repeated several times. Yes, Marta, you said.
I felt a beautiful thing, because for me it's not a dialogue, because Shylock is not offering any information and any feedback, and I think Bassanio doesn't recognize it, because he keeps talking while Shylock.
He keeps talking without really getting into a dialogue. Right, and Anya, you were very right in saying that there are questions which are not answered, yes? Now, there are two sides to this. Yes, sorry. Yes.
I just wonder what Bassanio feels, because he wants something, he needs it, and he doesn't know if he's going to receive it. And Shylock is just playing like an adult, as down 3,000. It's a lot of money. You don't have that money. And what you said is very interesting. He's repeating, but at the same, Bassanio has the time to feel that, okay, I need, what can I do to receive that money?
So desperate?
Yes, just desperate. By just imagine that you are a little bit of, you want something, and it depends from the other, and you just don't know what to do. So I'm calling back Antonio, who's representing something that I feel connected with, but I'm not like Antonio. What I can recognize by this one Shylock is telling me, oh, Antonio,
They talk about Antonio.
Exactly. And you, then there's just like, I feel that what with you? You have nothing. So it's not that Shylock, it doesn't use the words, but what I would feel as an actor is just kind of being a smaller type of so I just
I was just wondering if there is I kind of see a very high level of manipulation on both parts. It's like a dance. There's rules, and they know them, and they play upon them, and milk the situation with all they can to kind of for Shylock to experience the situation as the bigger part, lending the money, and for Bassanio to get the money, and they know they will get it. At one point, they will meet the negotiation with the group because both of them need this to happen. but they melted.
Does Shylock need it to happen is a great question.
Yeah, I don't know that actually, but it's his job, it's his way of living. So
It's his, yes, that's how he gets his living, yes, that's true. In that sense, he will enter into the negotiation.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's for me, Thomas.
I just wanted to say that it goes in two directions because Bassanio is really in need and is rationing, and at the same time, I think and feel that he really doesn't really care about Shylock himself. It's the money he needs, and he despises Shylock. At the same time, Shylock is perfectly aware of the situation. So he also knows that Bassanio needs money. He is somehow enjoying the feeling of being the recognized party in a way, someone who has the money and can and will, as we assume, give it.
The money will be given, of course, yes, that's the point. But you see the beauty of Shakespeare. You look at these words, you think you understand everything. And when you start thinking about it, you have problems and problems and problems, okay? Very well. So let me sum up the discussion we had. We have here a situation in which the division into one and the other is very clear on the grounds of the way the community of Venice is set up. We have the Venetians and we have the Jews, who are definitely the other for the Venetians, but remembering the symmetry of the situation, we at the same time are made aware that Venetians are the other for Shylock. And this is one great thing about this scene, that Shakespeare does not make it asymmetrical. He makes it symmetrical from the very beginning. We look at Bassanio and Shylock in a situation of negotiation in which Bassanio wants to enter into a bond in the sense of obligation, financial obligation, by asking for the money to be lent, right? And Shylock negotiates as a bank. So we have the client and the banker, and if you ever negotiated for a credit, you know that the negotiation is important. You want to know all the conditions of the bond, because the bank will take on itself the obligation of giving you the money, but at the same time you are obliged to pay the money back with an interest. So the negotiation must be very careful, because both sides must come to a solution which will be good for both parties. Yes, for one and the other. However, there is something extremely false in this negotiation, and that's position of Bassanio. Shylock is the banker. Shylock is the usurer. Shylock is the one who will lend the money in order to earn money. And everybody recognizes this straightforward, we know that, and Shylock knows who he is. Who is Bassanio? What is his position? Do you go to the bank to negotiate for a credit which somebody else will pay? Have you thought about it? And that's our situation. I'm trying to make you aware that what happens here in this text is something that may happen to each of us. Will anybody talk to you seriously about money if it's not you who will pay back? And we might think about how Bassanio then treats his situation. Does he see it? Does he understand it? What does he do? He hates the Jew, but he will never show it. So how would you describe his politeness? Is he looking into the face of the Jew? Does he allow the Jew to see his face? No. Nice. Okay, so Jacek has shown me this, which means you shut up. And I propose now that you think about working in pairs. I don't want to say 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you're forced to make. You choose whoever you want to work today with. And I shall give you now 15 minutes to start thinking what you could do about this part of the dialogue. Remember that we have also another dialogue, and that's the dialogue of Antonio with Shylock. So some of you will work on Bassanio Shylock, and some of you will be asked to consider Antonio and Shylock. But I want to give you now a small break to try to sort of constitute yourselves, discuss what you might do, what you see in it, how you would like to get it on the stage, how you would like to enter into the encounter, knowing what we have singled out as possible possibilities, but remembering also that when you impersonate a character in a drama, you enter with the dialogue with the other character. And that happens in the time and space of this fictional world, of this fictional Venice. But you perform for us, and we are in Gdańsk, 2021, August. Aha! And your performance is to offer a dialogue for us. So we have two situations to create. The situation of this encounter between Bassanio and Shylock, and also the situation in which the dialogue is between what happens between those two and the audience. How do we sell it to the audience? What do we want to signal to the audience? Okay. So this is the task number 1, 15 minutes break, and afterwards we go to the second part of the scene. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, that was the easy part, I'm sorry to say. But there is more material for us to think about, to analyze. Maybe we won't be able to perform all of it. Certainly we shall not have that time. Where is Jacek?
Yeah.
After an hour, okay? After an hour, right. So that I more or less do not get lost. And I want you to have lunch today. Now, I have to perform a little bit in order to make you aware of how complicated the matters begin when Antonio appears. We still shall have a conversation, a dialogue between Antonio and Shylock that is only 2 characters, but Bassanio is present. He is there. He is somebody to whom the characters will turn, and we have to recognize that when we have first read through the dialogue. The other thing is that here we deal with longer speeches, which you may consider as a monologue, which means that the character who has a monologue takes a lot of time and space on the screen. But each Shakespearean monologue may be turned to another character or to the audience, or just completely taken mentally out of that space. And it depends really on your interpretation and your understanding or your creation of what happens on the stage and what happens between the people in that encounter, that you may do it in a specific way. We shall have also an aside here, a very typical Shakespearean aside, which means that the lines given here on the page, and which we are informed it's an aside. Remember that Shakespeare did not put in his texts any stage directions. He didn't need it because he was there in the theater, and when he composed his dialogue, he would do it with the actors, and they will decide how they want to speak the lines. So if you have the information aside, is an information of the editors, much later editors of Shakespeare's text, but it's not an obligation. The actors do not have really to listen to it. And we can, when we interpret the dialogue and want to make it alive, we can read it in different ways, not necessarily as an aside, okay? So we look at page 2, where Antonio enters. We forego the question, who comes here? That's Antonio. It's sort of unimportant business at the moment. What happens is that when Bassanio says, this is Signor Antonio, Shylock has this monologue, and the problem for us is to whom he speaks. Is it an essay? Do we want it to be an essay? And what happens? What does he do? How like a fawning publican he looks, a fawning publican, flattering politician, a very good description. If you don't like your politician, you may use this cryptic description of Shakespeare, and nobody will arrest you for that because they will not understand. How like a fawning publican he looks. I hate him, for he is a Christian. But more for that. In low simplicity, he lends out money gratis and brings down the rate of usance here, usance, usury. With us in Venice, us. If I can catch him once upon the hip, if I can really get him, all right, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. Grudge meaning hatred, really. He hates our sacred nation. And he rails even there where merchants most do congregate, gather, on me. He rails on me. He makes bad remarks about me, angry remarks, unpleasant remarks about me, where the merchants most do gather together, on the Rialto, of course. We are in Venice. So he rails on me, my bargains, and my well-won thrift, which he calls interest. Notice the interpretation, the two words. The money I earn is my thrift. I'm saving it. I'm careful about money. And he calls it interest. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. Cursed be my tribe. He finishes by cursing. He beginning by talking about his hate. Then he speaks of Antonio's hate. Then he comments on the situation. What's the outcome? Where the difference? There are two ways in which they hate the one party and the other, right? It's the fact of being Jews, Old Testament, Christians, New Testament, Old Law, New Law, the faith, the difference, but also the way they treat money and make business. So we have a complicated set of interests and disinterest between the two groups. It's not just Antonio and Shylock, because we have this us in the meantime and my tribe. So what Shylock does here, he enters into a comment on a more general situation. It's not only a personal situation, or you may interpret it not only as a personal expression of hatred, but also as a description of or understanding of the situation from the point of view of Shylock. He tries to read the face of the other, of Antonio, and the Christians, And we may give it a thought to what extent he's right or wrong. Should he say it? Does it help the encounter? Does it clarify what this encounter is about? These are the problems for us, okay? And let's go and see what happens next. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. Bassanio, Shylock, do you hear? What does Bassanio do? What has Bassanio been doing? And what has Antonio been doing on the stage when Shylock delivers this lengthy monologue? They are there. They have to relate themselves to the situation in Shylock, in which Shylock, I don't know, walks away. Who is talking and who is silent? This is one of the greatest ways in which Shakespeare plans the action on the stage, by giving one actor, one character, a lengthy speech which looks like an essay, which looks like thinking. Now, thinking is silent. So if there are other people on the stage, they should be talking. They should be engaged so that the person who is thinking has time to do the thinking. It's an extremely interesting way in which you complicate things that are happening. And if you do not pay attention to the fact how you see the situation, you cannot see what is happening, okay? Bassanio's only intrusion in the dialogue here is, Shylock, do you hear? So he continues his role of the first part of the stage, when he is, of the scene, when he is impatient and he wants the money. So he keeps nagging Shylock to take the decision. Shylock, do you hear? And Shylock turns to Bassanio, to Antonio, to both. You have to decide. I am debating of my present store, of how much money I have. And by the near guess of my memory, I cannot instantly raise up the gross of full 3,000 ducats. Ah, what of that? Tubal, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe, will furnish me. But softer. How many months do you desire? What was this question? How many months do you desire? Rest you fair, signor. To whom? To Antonio? To Bassanio? Rest you fair, be quiet, don't worry. Your worship was the last man in our mouth. True. You are the last person of whom I would have thought anything bad. So what is Shylock doing? He's acting in the sense of pretending to be somebody else than he is. That what is happening is not happening. Antonio, don't think bad of me. I'm your friend, huh? Okay, Antonio reacts. Shylock, although I neither lend nor borrow by taking nor by giving of excess, yet to supply the ripe wants of my friend, I'll break a custom. What is he doing? Assessing his position in Venice. I am above usury, boasting. Making sure that he is the righteous one, giving Shylock a lesson of what he thinks of usury, or giving himself alibi, but I'm sorry, I don't approve of usury, but I need usury at this moment, so I will borrow from you on interest, agreeing to deal.
In the name of friendship.
in the name of doing something good to my friend, yeah? So I will not be about it. Notice how much falsehood gets into this, how this meeting the other is a crisis from the beginning to the end, and none of the parties works for solution. Okay, let's go on. Shylock pretends that he didn't know how many months. Now he says, 3,000 ducats once again. And for 3 months, says Antonio. Shylock, I had forgot. 3 months. How many times he repeated 3 months before? Okay, all right, I have forgot. You told me so. Well then, your bond, that means we enter into business, yes? And let me see another idea, but hear you. Methought you said you neither lend nor borrow upon advantage. I do never use it. And then Shylock, I'm sorry, but I will have to sort of slightly cut it. Shylock gets on to tell the story from the Bible about how Jacob worked in order to make his sheep grow so that he might take over the inherit from his father. So in a way, he used tricks in order to make sure that the sheep that will be born will have a specific color, or will be of 2 colors, and in that way he will be richer and better doing than his brother, and his father will then grant him the heritage. So Laban, the father, was in a way taken in by the trick that Jacob played on him. It's a pretty well-known story from the Old Testament. What is interesting for us is that Shylock uses Old Testament story as an illustration of the fact that thinking of how to make money and being tricky about it is nothing wrong. And the authority is the Bible. It's in the Bible. And so this is the story that we can overlook because we don't have time to go into everything, okay? When he begins this story, the very beginning of it, when Jacob grazed his uncle Laban's sheep, this Jacob from our holy Abram was, and as his wise mother wrought in his behalf, the third possessor, he was the third, and he wants to get into the details of the story that he was the third son and had no chances for getting over the money. Antonio was impatient. And what of him? Did he take interest? He brings the situation from the Bible back to the situation now. I want to talk about money. And Shylock takes time and gets on with the story. And it's a long story, okay? And you have to think about Antonio and Bassanio listening to that story. How much interest they have in the story. Why do they listen to it? Why they never stop him? That's part of what is going on between the people here, right? Okay, the story is told, and Antonio says, this was a venture, sir, that Jacob searched for, a thing not in his power to bring to pass, but swayed and fashioned by the hand of heaven. Was this inserted to make interest good? Or is your gold and silver ewes and rams? He's being ironic about the story, but at the same time, he gives the Jew a lesson. It's a very bad example, because it wasn't really in the power of Jacob to make the sheep develop as Jacob wanted. It was the intervention of God. So you better think about your story. You don't know how to read the Bible. And that, of course, is the main issue when you think of the difference in faith, of how we treat the Bible if we are Jews and how we treat the Bible if we are Christians. Okay? Right. So there we are. On we go. Suddenly, the negotiation was stopped, and yet the negotiation must go on, because as we expect, the encounter must have some sort of solution. We have to get somewhere, all right? Right, so Shylock says, I cannot tell, I make it breed as fast, but note me, senior, I want to change the discussion, note me, senior, please pay attention. And Antonio turns back on Shylock. He does not mark Shylock, he turns to Bassanio. Note me, senior, says Shylock, and immediately Antonio says, mark you this, Bassanio, note me, mark you. These are ways in which Elizabethans would try to bring somebody's attention. And so you have this gesture, which is signaled here in words. Note me, senior, says Shylock, and senior Antonio at this moment says, mark you this, Bassanio, ignoring, turning his shoulder against Shylock, right? And how? The devil can cite scripture for his purpose. Scripture, the word for the holy text, yes? An evil soul producing holy witness is like a villain with a smiling cheek, a goodly apple, rotten at the heart. Oh, what a goodly outside falsehood has. A sermon, isn't it? So to whom does Antonio direct this sermon? To Bassanio? So you see how complicated it can be what happens between the characters here, what games they play. And this exchange about Jacob and the sheep and the story from the Holy Bible and the way you interpret and why you quote it and what you understand about it, that really is all the time, don't you think, abuse against abuse? Where is the negotiation? How do they want to conclude the business if they keep getting away from each other rather than coming together? All those wonderful ideas of Buber and Levinas, when you think of being with the other, getting into the dialogue. We have a dialogue, but is it a dialogue? Okay, let's go on. So Shylock repeats again his lovely lines. 3,000 kurts, it is a good round sum. 3 months from 12, it's only 1/4 of the year. Then let me see the rate. Antonio. Well, Shylock, shall we be beholding to you? That is, shall we conclude the business? Shall we get the money? All right. Signor Antonio, says Shylock, and you expect that he concludes the business. Many a time and oft in the Rialto you have rated me, you have criticized me about my monies and my usances, my usury. Still, I have borne it with a patient shrug. For sufferance is the badge of all our tribe. Suffering really, being patient in suffering. You call me misbeliever, cutthroat dog, and spit upon my Jewish gabardine, and all for use of what which is mine own. Well then, it now appears you need my help. Go to then, you come to me and you say, Shylock, we would have monies. You say so. You that did void your room upon my beard. That's another beautiful description of spitting about somebody. Mm-hmm. What should I say to you? Should I not say, have a dog money? Is it possible a cur can lend 3,000 ducats? Or shall I bend low and in a bondman's key, bondman is a slave, with bated breath, stopped breath, and whispering humbleness, say this, fair sir, you spit on me. You spit on me on Wednesday last. You spurned me such a day. Another time you called me dog, and for these courtesies, I lend you this much monies. An astounding speech, isn't it? But again, you have to ask yourself, so why does he do it? Why does he say all this? Why does he need to say this? Is he trying to help himself in saving some dignity for himself, that is saving his own face, keeping his own face? I am a human being. I need to be recognized as a human being. I need my dignity to be, as a human being, be recognized, and you don't do it. You don't see me, and yet you want to talk to me about business. So in a way, you might say Shylock here sees that this is not a concrete encounter, this is a false encounter. There is no way in which it should be carried along. So you might consider that Shylock is here represented as one of the two, as more dignified, as more worthy of our respect than Antonio. But we heard Shylock say what he thought about Antonio and the Christians and how he felt about the Christians in that, at the beginning of this reading, when he had this aside, not aside, okay? So there is a certain ambiguity in the way the presentation of Shylock is offered to us. There are two sides or three sides to this man. Certainly there is more to Shylock than to Antonio. Mm-hmm. And this is what I particularly like about The Merchant of Venice, that when you get into the text, you discover that there is no way in which you can have black and white character. So if we work on the encounter, we have to take the fact that our enemy, or the person, the other of whom we do not approve, or who does not really attract our attention and sympathy, still may give us a lesson when we gaze properly. Mm-hmm. We can learn from that character. Okay. So Shylock has this great piece of it, and Antonio answers to it. Okay? Now, what about his answer? I am as like to call thee so again, to spit on thee again, to spurn thee too. If thou wilt lend this money, lend it not as to thy friends. For when did friendship take a breed for barren metal of his friend? But lend it rather to thine enemy, who, if he break, thou mayst with better face exact the penalty. That is, if I fail in bringing money back to you, you will get your interest, you will have your punishment on me. And Shylock, look look, you how you storm, you're so angry. I would be friends with you. Turning the tables again, isn't he? I'll be friends with you and have your love, forget the shames that you have stained me with, supply you present wants, and take no doit of usance, not a farthing of interest for my monies. And you'll not hear me, this is a kind of offer. Bassanio, a little, and that's very kind, huh? Shylock, this kindness will I show, go with me to a notary, seal me there, so nothing is done on just on talking. We have to go to the lawyer. You're single bond in a merry sport if you repay me not on such a day, in such a place, such a sum or sums as are expressed in the condition on the paper. Let the forfeit be nominated for an equal pound of your fair flesh. And that's how the deal is concluded. Antonio is very happy to accept it very quickly, and so Bassanio is also a little bit anxious, but of course it's Antonio's money, so Bassanio only wants to keep his position of a friend. Here we are. That's where we stop, because it's far too long, and there are such a lot of things here that go on between Antonio and Shylock. It's, you can see how the beginning of the scene, which was a pretty straightforward situation, we could quickly get our judgment on who is who, what is the position, what is the sacred space on which they negotiate, why they negotiate, what is going on between the two of them was not so very complicated. But I was trying to take you through the second part of this scene to make you aware of how much more complicated the dialogue and the encounter is when it comes to the exchange between Shylock and Antonio, and not only exchange, because as I was trying to make you aware, the beginning is as if Shylock was not directed his hate at Antonio, but thinking about his hate or telling the audience about his hate, okay? Right, so now the floor is yours. I want your comments. I want you to tell me where you find is the most interesting moment of the duel between the two, because it's not an encounter in the sense that we were thinking of meeting and trying to get the dialogue going. Tishner says if you have a question, you have a situation in which one asks the question, the other answers, and the answer may be a question to the one who questioned. And in that sense, we build dialogue and we build understanding between us, and we clarify issues, and we meet on equal ground, and we can go on even if we are not very fond of one another, but we have built something. We have a dialogue. Very clearly, if you look at the page, you have people and they have their own lines to speak, and you expect them to stand up in front of you and exchange the words. And so what? This is a lengthy and more complicated part of this scene, so I'd rather that you try to single out a moment which is particularly striking for you and why, and what is going on.
Would you like us to work first?
No, I want the discussion now, yes, yeah.
I think the very close to conflict, like you mentioned conflict, in very many places you have this dialogue between Antonio and Shylock. And actually, Shylock very carefully steers away at the, it looks like very last moment when he can steer away so Antonio doesn't get offended or something, because it's Shylock who is the power here, in a sense, to me at least.
Because he has the money.
He has the money, right. So, but the conflict is pretty close in some places. They're very close to actually Antonio getting upset. Right?
Where do you think, in which moment of the dialogue you would place the conflict at its strongest?
The first moment when he goes on about the scripture, okay, at some point, Antonio, well, yes, fine, but where's the money? Okay, it seems like that. Then Shylock goes on and like Signor Antonio made a time and asked him the reality had rated me.
So the speech about spitting on him, on the Rialto, yes, publicly.
Actually. I, as I like to call thee, so again, to spit on thee again, to spurn thee too, if thou wilt lend the money, lend it, not either person, right?
So they really come to fists.
Yeah, almost. Yes. I'm sorry.
There is something in Shylock that is not really an attack. Because we talked about them as if there is this like mutual attack and mutual hatred, mutual that they are very open in about that they don't like.
In the attitudes.
There is no manipulation really going on. There is no one is pretending anything. Shylock in this kind of withdrawing, but in the way what he says, okay, about the spitting, about what you did to me, it is as if you were asking, because these are questions. What should I say to you? Should I not say, have a dog money? Is it possible a cur can lend 3,000 ducats? There is some kind of asking, please consider that, or maybe reconsider. Maybe I think still, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel
Nobody is wrong. Nobody is wrong. We are building a situation.
Shylock is trying to negotiate his position in a way, as if trying to ask Antonio, okay, think of that. Maybe think of that for what you did to me. Maybe you will reconsider. He said, okay, I will not forgive him. It seems that he bears that right. But on the other hand, he says that to Antonio. Am I really a dog? Am I a dog? You now want money from me. Am I? Maybe as
I know. You suggest that he wants Antonio to read his face. I want your gaze, he says to Antonio. I want you to see me.
Recognize me. Please recognize me. And what Antonio is adamant. I'd like to hold this record. So, no, I will look at you the way I looked at you so far, and that there will be no change. And then Shylock withdraws, and this withdrawal means, okay, maybe I'm going to do it my way. I will not be honest with you then. But there is this kind of withdrawal also in the sense of, okay, I failed. I failed in that kind of, I'm not recognized by that other. He doesn't want to recognize me. That's how I feel it here. It doesn't have to be very aggressive, Shylock.
Yes, I think Shylock has a strong feelings towards Antonio, hate, and the only opportunity to exchange to take a relation is a counter, making a business. So I think he wants keep Antonio as long as possible by telling him stories, exchanging these.
So, if I understand you correctly, you suggest that what is possible between them two, thank you, what is possible between them two is to conclude the business, but what is impossible is human encounter. They will never meet. Yes. They will never look at each other.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because
but they can still...
in totally different culture and society. And Shylock wants to explain his why he's different from Antonio, and wants to keep him as long as possible
So you have a sort of conflicting direction at which Shylock operates. Of course, I want to conclude the business, but I don't want to get through to you. Right.
Possibility, I think you're thinking of the only possibility for Shylock to actually say what he thinks about Antonio, because there's no other places he could do that. And this is the first time Antonio came to money. He will not come again. Yes. And I think the first dialogue with Bassanio, right now, after this thought, it was to like arranged by Shylock to catch Antonio's presence in the second dialogue. Save.
I think Joanna deserves now the floor. Yes.
I was thinking about that Shylock is in full control of the situation. It doesn't seem like that, but because he's extremely angry, what comes through his monologue, the hatred. But a person that is hating so much and all the emotion, and he's in control of them all the time, shifts. I agree with you. He maybe tries and just shows the real face of himself, but in anger as well, but he's in control, he plays and then it's the game.
So would you say that he controls in the situation which may be expressed in this one line when he says, if I could get him on the hip, that is, if I could trap him, that he is in fact leading to the trap. Mm-hmm.
And trying different strategies, keeping him in the situation, and then,
Think of an alternative version of that dialogue. Yeah. I'm thinking, okay, we will not rewrite Shakespeare. So if we try, thinking about what we learned yesterday, if we just get with, let's think that, okay, Antonio changes. Antonio is different. Antonio gets rid of that suspicion, hatred towards, and altiness, because it's not only this feeling superior, and say, okay, Shylock, I did something wrong to you. And I'm thinking about the possibility of that kind of dialogue, of the recognition, and then I'm thinking, okay, what would Shylock do then? Would he be like that? Would it be possible then for Shylock to really open? Or would he be like that dog that he is called, that when you give him a hand, he will bite? And I don't know really. Mm-hmm. But it would be interesting to think of Antonio changing the tone.
Yes. I've been just wondering, because I'm a teacher, it's like I haven't taken part in such a workshop where I have to analyze something, but immediately educational context comes to my mind, and I just wanted to ask you, don't you think that the way we interpret something shows our personality and our personal, how should I say, ways of solving a conflict, approaching a conflict, that our personality, it's occurred to me when I said something that Claudia said, and I said how different we are in interpreting the text. And it's wonderful because it renders itself to educational context. Right, with our students. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, that our interpretation is part of what we are and how we understand. The text is always in a context, it's never in a void. And we bring lots of context to every text we read. And in fact, we're not innocent readers. We're always, in a way, directed by our set of values, by our face, so to say. Okay, and now part of the interpretation that we had here, that you tried to agree and disagree, is in fact trying to defend your understanding of what you would do in a situation like this.
And I think also looking at different perspectives, but discuss the different interpretations and understanding of the text presents the different perspectives that are so important in the classroom, because we are different, learn differently, sing differently, and it is in a context as well. It's not only us what took place here, what happened previously, all those elements at the same time. And understanding Shylock is a togetherness of different perspectives, because he's all of what we say. He's not only my understanding, he's yours as well. At the same time, I would say that, I would find that in this, with this learning process.
So understanding the other is difficult.
Very difficult indeed, yes. But notice how much depends on our will to read the other's face, to learn from the other. Could we say that in this encounter of Shylock and Antonio, there is a moment in which one learns from the other? Or that they want to at least, or that they try to? Now, perhaps Shylock wants to show his face rather than learn from Antonio, I would say. Yes, Jacek?
I got the impression that Shylock is testing us all along, trying to provoke certain reactions. And I'm struck by this line. It's page, the penultimate page, the last one, the top of the page, right? When Shylock reacts to Antonio's words. Why look you out in the storm? Now, we can say, wait a minute, Shylock stormed in a similar manner before. However, maybe that's actually can be interpreted also in that Shylock is in full control of the situation and has tested Antonio. Okay, let me see how you react actually to me, my kind, my tribe. Okay, and then something really strange happens, because he says, I will be friends with you and him, which is sheer fake. Yeah, elegant. Okay, but that's the moment when they get back to prison, so to say. But Antonio knows it, Shylock knows it. Okay, there will be no law ever between them. But okay, now I have tested what I wanted to test. I know what you are, what you are capable of. You said yourself that this is the first encounter. Okay, the first not even a chance to speak to each other. Okay, not express hatred on Antonio's part.
Enter into the dialogue rather than shout at one another.
Exactly. And Shylock uses it as a
I think yes.
More comments? Yes, Maria?
I was thinking that we could also have a look at this pound of flesh, because it's like this ultimate attempt, or I don't know, maybe not ultimate attempt, but Antonio despises Shylock for taking interest, yes, for making money on money. Okay, so I have to earn, yes, but I will not earn the way you despise me for, but I will earn the way in which you put your life into my hands. Kind of terribly aggressive, but also in a way a kind of final attempt to asserting my dignity against you, because you despise me so much, and now you are willing to put your life into my hands.
Right. And it's funny, isn't it? Or ironic, I should say, how they both accept it quickly. without seeing what it really may mean. Yes, thank you for this remark. Very good.
Is it Bassanio that is the only one who noticed that? When something's wrong has happened. But Bassanio seemed to be young and inexperienced and be more responsible.
Okay, we have 50 minutes before us. And I have another task for you, and then we have to perform the tasks. So the task for the second part is an entirely different task. I want you to try to enter into a dialogue in which one party will defend Shylock and the other will defend Antonio. And both of you will try to negotiate for a solution of the crisis. So a completely different task, not trying to act Shakespeare, but by trying to enter into the situation and into the two characters, you try to argue, one for Antonio, one for Shylock, but to argue in such a way that you come to a positive outcome, that you overcome the crisis. And try to think in terms of modern world, or our world, rather than Shakespearean world. So take the situation, lift it from Shakespeare, and try to make it something like your own encounter. Okay? What I propose is that some of you stay with Bassanio and Shylock, and those who feel more how shall I say, brave, who are brave new world, try to the second task. I know that the second task is much more difficult. Okay, but the resolution is yours. If nobody wants to do it, I will accept it. No punishment, as Adam said yesterday. Okay, 15 minutes for moving around, establishing what you want to do, rehearsing what you want to do, and we shall have performance at the end. I hate to stop you. I must say, looking at you being engaged and never looking at me and not listening to my clapping makes me very happy. It means that I had a good idea to show you what can be done with a dialogue of Shakespeare and how it is important to try to get into not just the words, but what happens, what the words suggest that happens. So I'm really very, very happy to see that you are going on and going on and going on and being so happy about it. You make me proud. Okay, but we only have half an hour to go. And what I would like to do is that we actually try to show what we have done with the tasks, because that's what should give you the satisfaction. Okay, I have my satisfaction, now it's time for yours. So who would like to volunteer Bassanio and Shylock? Come on, don't be shy, try. Trying is the key. Rosanna, you want to do it? You look like you would like to. Why not? Why not? Come on. Come on. With Michał. Are you a team, Michał and you? Okay, come on. Come on, please. Please. No. The first are always the best. Remember, come on, come on, come on, come on. The idea is we do it together, we try together. You do it.
We already entered, so it should be easier. Ready?
Yes.
3,000 ducats. Well,
I serve for 3 months.
for 3 months. Well.
For the which, as I told you, Antonio shall be bound.
Antonio shall be come down. Well,
May you tell me, will you pleasure me? Shall I know your answer?
3,000 ducats for 3 months, and Antonio Valls.
And your answer to that?
Antonio is a good man.
Have you heard any imputation on the contrary?
No. I mean, saying he is a good man is to have you understand me that he is sufficient. Yet his needs are in supposition. He had another down to Tripoli, another to the Indies. I understand, moreover, upon the Rialto, he had a third in Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he had squandered abroad. But ships are but all sailors are men. There are land rats, and water rats, water thieves and land thieves, and pirates. And then there is the pearl of waters, winds the rocks, men's upward standing. Sufficient. 3,000 ducats, I think. I may pay this much.
Be assured you may.
I will be assured. And I may be assured I speak of Antonio.
Oh, if you please, you to dine with us.
Yes, to smoke pork to your habitation with your prophets, the Nazarites, conjure the devil in it. I will buy with you, I will sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so forth. I cannot eat with you, drink with your prey. When you saw the Rialto, who is he to stand?
Now, you stay where you are. We know the words. We all have the words in front of us. I would like you to comment on what happens between them, the way they did the act of reading, okay?
The terrible discomfort.
No. Something interesting did happen.
Mild voices.
Mild voices, yes. You should throw more out, yes.
Shylock is self-assured, isn't he? And Bassanio is like actually all the time a little bit afraid of him.
Yes, but he fawning, trying to be nice. Yes, very good. Yes,
I think Bożena was wonderful in getting this sense of insecurity. Bassanio wants this one.
Yes.
And he is not sure whether he's going to get it. And he
really would like to get it, but he doesn't.
And he, you know, and I thought that one of the most difficult things in getting Bassanio is trying to get at the same time insecurity and arrogance. Because he's proud, because he's Christian, he's Venetian, he's better. But at the same time, he needs the money.
Yeah. So here we had Bassanio, who was insecure, not necessarily thinking he is better, but that's okay. That's it. You say you cannot do everything. Now, what about Shylock? This Shylock. He never once looked at Bożena. Yes, Tone?
He has a very explaining way. He knows everything. So you could ask him everything, and he has the answer, and very, yeah.
So if you think you're better, you're wrong because I'm better. Yes. Yeah. 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 But what struck me was that Shylock avoided looking at Bassanio, as if you did not want to get into any encounter at all. And that's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, we did try to get something that is happening between them. As I say, the words, you have the words, we know the words. It's what happens between them. Thank you. Lovely. Who else? Come on. I'm not looking, you come out. The same scene, yes. Your idea, okay? Okay. All right. And we are thinking what we're getting from them.
3,000 ducats. Well,
I said, for 3 months?
for 3 months, well.
For the wages, I told you Antonio shall be back.
Antonio shall be bound. Well,
May you steady me? Will you pleasure me? Shall I know your answer?
3,000 ducats for 3 months and 20 pounds.
Your answer to that?
Antonio is a good man.
Have you had an imputation to the contrary?
Oh, no. My meaning is saying he's a good man is to have you understand me that he's sufficient. Yet his means are in supposition. He has an argosy bound to Tripolis, another to the Indies. I understand, moreover, on the reality, he has a third at Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he has squandered abroad. But ships are but board, sailors but men, there be land rats and water rats, water thieves and land thieves, I mean pirates, and then there is the peril of waters, winds and rocks. The man is, notwithstanding, sufficient. 3,000 ducats. I think I may take his bond.
Be assured you may.
I will be assured I may, and I may be assured I will be, think me. May I speak with Antonio?
If it please you to dine with us.
Yes, to smell pork, to eat of the habitation which you prophet, the Nazarite, conjured the devil into. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, will walk with you, and so following, but I will not eat with you, drink with you, nor pray with you. What news on Rialto is he comes here?
What did we get?
Shylock Great Bassanio.
In the first part.
Yes.
That's what I wanted.
Yes.
And they were also working with the space between them. You get forth and back and get closer and closer, and in the end, you were close.
Yes. You sort of came together,
Yes.
although this coming together was not really coming together. Right. Yes.
The space basically belonged to Shylock. Bassanio was entirely confined as in some historical philosophies.
Shylock was also a kind of lecturer, like explaining the world to Bassanio. That was a very good question.
Yes, I will teach that young man. Okay, very good. So this is really, this is what I want. This is what I am after, to make you see that we may do such a lot of things. What I missed in the two performances was taking the audience into account. You excluded us. You talked between yourselves in various ways. We could assume that, but we didn't exist. No? And it's not a question only of playing so that I keep my face to you, but that I take your presence into account and that I want confirmation from you as a Shylock, or I want encouragement if I am Bassanio. I think this is very important, that once you see what happens between the characters in the situation of theatrical performance, or where you try to build something between the characters, say you're one of those characters, you have to remember that you live in the world, and you don't conclude this business only between the two of you, because you always are immersed in the community. So the audience is the community with which you have to take some sort of relationship. You have to build it in a way. Is there anybody who would try to do that? Because I suggested that that is part of the way I think you too wanted to do it. I can see that in your faces. Okay.
$3,000. Well,
Is there for 3 months?
for 3 months. Well,
For the witch, as I told you, Antonio shall be bound.
Antonio shall become bound.
May you stead me, will you pleasure me? Shall I know your answer?
3,000 ducats for 3 months, and Antonio bound.
Your answer to that?
Antonio is a good one.
Have you heard my imputation on the contrary?
No. My meaning in saying he's a good one is to have you understand me that he's sufficient. Yet this means our supposition he had an argosy bound in the Tripolis, another to Indies. I understand moreover upon the Rialto he had a third in Mexico, a fourth for England, and other venture he had squandered abroad, but ships are but ports, sailors but men. There be land rats, water rats, water thieves, land thieves, pirates, and then there is the peril of waters, winds, and rocks. The menace notwithstanding sufficient 3,000 ducats. I think I might take this bond.
Be assured you may.
I will be assured I may, and I may be assured I will bethink me, may I speak with Antonio.
If it please you to dine with us.
Yes, to smell pork, to eat of habitation which your prophet Nazareth conjured the devil into. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and do so following, but I will not eat with you, drink with you, or nor pray with you. What's news on the Rialto? Who is he comes here?
That's it. Anya, how about the last bit? I will talk with you, I will conclude business with you, but I will not eat with you. It's a tirade against Christians. Now take us all for Christians, not just Antonio and Bassanio, and tell us that you will not do it with us. Just try this little bit.
This would be...
No, come on. I'm sure you can do it. No, you're a very good actress. The idea is, you see, this is the bit where actually the text invites you to take us into consideration. And suddenly you're not dealing in Venice with just Bassanio. You are in Venice, you are on the Rialto, and we are the Christians. And you tell us that, okay, I will do that with you, I will do that with you, I will do that with you, but not eat with you. And that's where I refuse.
Right, I would never think of it like that. I mean, to target it to Bassanio, yes, but to target it to everybody, it's like, seems like too much, but I understand what you mean.
How about your ideas about that? This is a sort of thing that lends itself to getting the audience, and so that this wooden O becomes one place. We are one community. Theatre brings us all together. Actors are not separate people.
Yeah,
and
but this is the
that's
sound.
togetherness, although in the sense that you want to explain to us that in spite of this togetherness, you are the other. And there is no commerce between us. Okay?
Yes, actually, this is the stand that Shylock makes. The statement that he wants to...
Okay, the second task, much more difficult. How are we for time? Not much time left, so we have 20 minutes. Two performances. If we can get it, we'll be very happy. Okay, I'll disappear here.
Master. Right. You can't move the Dutch. Can't do it.
Will not take interest, not as you would say.
Directly interest? Mark, what Jacob did.
When Laban and himself were compromised.
That all the healings which were stripped and packed
should fall as Jacob's hire, Eve's being right.
in the end of autumn turned to the lands.
And when the work of generation was,
between these woolly breeders in the act,
the skillful shepherd filled me certain wands,
and in the doing of the deed of kind,
he stocked them up before the fulsome eves.
who then conceiving did in evening time
All hardcore lambs, and those were Jacob's.
this was a way to thrive, and he was blessed.
And thus his blessing, if men still ignore.
Don't disappear, don't disappear. Right. An interesting way of dealing with the problem by taking this story of Jacob and getting line against line and argument against argument. Why did you choose that? What gave you the key that this may be a very good way of?
Well, we stopped brainstorming because we came to the conclusion that they're incapable of communicating at all, because none of them would attempt to compromise his own identity that is so firmly rooted in the religion, ethnicity, the community that they belong to, right? So both communities in this text are highly exclusive, right? Mm-hmm. None would have accepted the other, put it that way. So then we thought, okay, so what happens now? Where is the common ground?
And it was the Bible, because they believe in it both.
Exactly.
And then there's just a very quick suggestion was to share a table, because sharing a table, it doesn't not include a dinner or a meal, but it's sharing a table.
Sharing the text that belongs to both sides.
Yeah, that's Jacek said, well, we should also share the text. Well, we share the text, but you said share the same manuscript.
The same copy.
Yes, yes, yes. That's brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. Wonderful way of solving the problem.
And
yes.
it was just thinking about today as well, because it was, how would we,
absolutely, yes, yes. The Bible should not be a fighting ground. It should be a ground of common conversation. Joining together.
Yeah, I was playing Antonio, perhaps you couldn't notice it. But I was trying to be, my face, I wanted to make it brighter and brighter towards the end, and I could see the sense of it, the solution, the ingenuity of Jacob, in this, early example of genetic engineering.
All right. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Who else is ready to give us defense of Shylock and Antonio? And I'm sure it will be a very different way of dealing with the problem. I think those people worked on that. And who else worked on it? Maria? No?
We fail.
No. I'm sure you have ideas. Look, it doesn't have to be a brilliant performance. What?
We didn't come to that point. So we started discussing the question whether there is any possibility of sharing a table, actually, or dining together.
Dining with you. Dining is not a possible solution.
Yeah.
All right.
And we actually stopped there.
Right. So nobody wants to defend them. You want?
Well,
you have ideas.
We can have a go. Just like,
well, why don't you? Exactly.
It's
right.
not a performance.
No,
it's just a conversation, like you said.
Just stand in front of us so that you get through to everybody. That's all.
You can sit behind the table.
Or you can sit behind the table.
So, I would defend Shylock.
Okay. I think we can intermingle because you are very good at actually pointing out specific features of Antonio and how to actually, so as not to leave it all in my hands defending Antonio, but rather.
Yes, I discovered that I could defend both. That was
that's right.
That was unusual because then I started defending Shylock on similar grounds that I already did. Is that he feels like excluded, the one who's been excluded by those who are the hosts. Yes, in Venice. And that he has a right to defend himself.
Mm-hmm.
But then...
Yeah, but we looked at it from the point of view of our times and actually immigrants in our country, for example, right? People coming from abroad with different background, educational background, religious background, and so on, and feeling that their position, and perhaps, but then doing what they've been doing, is actually earning their life, but following the principles that they've learned in their childhood from their parents. So all the history goes behind them. And there we are, Antonio in Venice, Antonio in Poland, contemporary Poland, with all the historical, educational, family background behind him. This is my land, okay? And I am the host in the house, okay? So actually, you follow my rules, okay? I need you for various purposes, but you are, I invited you to my home, okay? But I don't let you into all of the rooms. I let you in only where I want you, for a specific purpose, like a neighbor who is looking after my cat, and I'd rather he stayed in the living room.
And I, Shylock, would feel uncomfortable with that. Mm-hmm. Why am I not accepted?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, and I'm not following your rules, I'm following my rules, but can't you try to understand why I'm doing that, why I'm following my rules, why they might be important for me?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I want the understanding. On the other hand, I'm not sure if you accept me, if I can really reciprocate truly. How would I react? Would I, if you give me your hand, finally, would I take it or bite it?
That's right. Yes.
Would I be, because I may still be feeling insecure, and that's why I'm going to bite your hand.
The biting of the hand, Claudia's mentioned that Shylock's very often in literature, he's actually referred to as a mongrel, okay, as a dog. So actually, on the one hand, you take out this in defense that can bite you, as well as if you actually try to pet it, it may get at you, right? Although you want to show the dog affection, but it may not respond the way you want it to respond, because there's too much in this dog's history of abuse and bad treatment and everything, right? So it's actually the Shylock. We were thinking about how to defend Antonio, because actually the very position that he's in the sense that he's the host, gives him his rights, but actually he should. It's a duty as well. Okay, it's a responsibility. Like Professor said, it's a responsibility. So in fact, if you are a host, if you are a visitor in my home, whether I like you very much or not, I should show hospitality to some extent, at least try to accept you as all that comes with you, namely your background and so on and so forth. So actually, we can live next to each other, perhaps, or not.
And I think
one
thing that I think we did not discuss, but it came to me with that dog metaphor. It will probably need time, a long time. The time that Antonio doesn't have because he needs ready, Bassanio doesn't have because he needs ready money, and they don't have time. That's why they have to conclude very quickly, not giving themselves time for real developing that kind of relationship. That's it.
Absolutely. We should reach some kind of conclusion or actually agree. I'm not sure if I defended Antonio's position enough or actually gave enough examples, because we sort of, but ultimately the task was to reach some kind of agreement. Togetherness.
I think we have.
Thank you. Thank you. This was exactly what I was after, to come to our times from medieval Venice or Renaissance Venice, and to see that the problem between Antonio and Shylock is really our problem. We all have those very different people who try to be our neighbors. Do we treat them like Antonio treats Shylock, or do we try to treat them as our neighbors? And I like this idea of your concluding that after all we may be neighbors. And then perhaps this is a starting ground for looking into each other's face and learning from each other. But before we can start that learning, we have to be able to sit together, not necessarily dine, but sit over the Bible or over a cat, no matter which, and try to understand why we can be human beings together. Thank you.
Thank you.
You gave me a great lesson. Thank you. But I thought you might be interested in getting a few images of Shylock. I collected various pictures of Shylock representing actors who impersonated Shylock. And I think it's a very good way to see what they understood of Shylock, or who Shylock was for the people who played Shylock for their audiences, because of course they played for the audiences, so they offered a picture of the character as they understood and as the audiences would like to have them. And you have, here you have Charles Macklin, quite an important actor of the 17th, 18th century. It's the earliest personation that I found. Maybe there are other things, but I can't pretend I have found everything. But you can see the way Shylock is presented, with the knife, getting ready to get the pound of flesh. So he is the monster and not a human being, okay? This is, again, more or less the same time, John Mortimer, who produced this idea of an actor who was also a famous impersonator. And this time it's not necessarily the knife, but the way the face is made, okay? All right, so 18th century, definitely the age of reason. Okay. Edmund Kean is one of the most important actors of the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century. And I think that there is a great change in the presentation of the character, that you can see the human being behind the idea of the Jew. He may be stern and looking with a purpose, but the purpose is not necessarily the pound of flesh. Okay. This is Shylock and Jessica, and it's not a painting done after a performance. It's a painting by Gilbert Stuart Newton, an artist, but I think that it, like impersonation by an actor, shows you what was understood by the character. This is Shylock talking to Jessica, and Jessica is not my favorite character, because I think what she does to her father and with the ring of her mother is something that doesn't make it easy to accept her as a positive character. Nevertheless, the Jew suffers when he loses her. And my question would be, do you think this Shylock would be extremely unhappy when she leaves with all the money he has? And is it more important, the money or the daughter? In the text, he makes an equal complaint about losing the money and losing the daughter. But in this picture, it looks as if money were more important than the daughter. Look, it's second half of the 19th century, and we go back to the detestable Jew. And this is definitely a sort of anti-Semitic representation already. We can see that the other is unacceptable. These are 19th century illustrations to additions of the play with illustrations. I think the artist who was most popular was Deleuze, but Deleuze is not here. It's other engravings. And what is interesting, I think, what might be interested in, is the presentation of the young Venetians in conversation with the Jew, Bassanio and the Jew, for example, okay? So you can see the reading is, I wonder whether you would say that it's critical of both sides. I don't know. Okay, Henry Irving, a very important actor of the end of the 19th century. And I would say that this time we come to meet somebody with whom we could have trouble to say whether we can look into his face or will he look into our face. With this man we may eventually expect that we shall have an encounter, a concrete encounter. Okay, This is perhaps a less interesting representation, but Laurence Olivier, and we deal here with a man, with a human being. It's no more that monster with a knife, with a terrible nose. It's something much more acceptable. But the date is 1970, and we are after the Second World War, and no more comments. We cannot impersonate Shylock now as a monster, can we? Henry Goodman, a beautiful performance of his. I saw it in the National Theatre, where he has, he's given all the dignity that he deserves in that production, of course. Al Pacino, you can see him at the beginning, when he's able to laugh at what the Christians want from him, and at the end, when he is destroyed by the Christians. Patrick Stewart, I haven't seen him, but again, here you have an English gentleman, definitely. Okay, Jonathan Pryce, one of the leading actors of the Royal Shakespeare Company. You have a comment there, because it came with the picture, how he wanted to represent Shylock as the moneylender who is both a tyrant and a victim. Tyrant, of course, towards his daughter. This is a Polish representation by a very good 19th century artist who was a Jew, and who was also a Pole who took part in resistance uprisings when we did not exist as a country. And he was one of the most important people fighting in the 1863 uprising. You cannot imagine that Maurizio would depict Shylock as a non-human being. Yeah. That's another, and here you have a Polish actor, a Jew, Andrzej Blumenfeld, who made a very impressive Jew in The Merchant of Venice in 2014. It's quite a well-known production. He plays it with the traditional representation of the gesture that Jews would make in the Polish culture. But at the same time, he is a normal human being. So that's the change. And this is another Polish actor on the left. That's what he looked like in the production. What was done on the picture on the right is an edition of a recent translation of The Merchant of Venice. And for unknown reason, the colors of the rainbow are added, because there, of course, there is the homosexual aspect, Antonio Bassanio, in The Merchant of Venice. But if you want to have this homosexual angle, you do not represent the Jew. Whereas what you have here is, I think it's a mistake, it's an artistic mistake, and the translator was extremely unhappy about this. So the second edition is already completely different, yes. And Andrew Tchaikovsky, a Polish compositor who wrote a Jew himself. He spent, after the Second World War, all his life in Great Britain. And he wrote music to an opera, The Merchant of Venice. So that's an interesting addition. That's, again, a representation of this opera, which was done in London. And Howard Jacobson, I don't know whether you've heard of him. He is an American writer. In 2016, when we had the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death, there was an action. Writers were invited to write novels on the motives of Shakespeare's plays, and Howard Jacobson wrote Shylock is My Name, and it's a very interesting upside-down treatment from the Jewish point of view. That's the end. Yes. All right. Thank you.